Good morning and welcome to our first New Economy Live event of 2023, the future of Calgary's experience economy, presented as part of Avenue Magazine's Future of the City Festival. My name is Kate Koplovich, Director of Strategy at Calgary Economic Development, and I will be your host and moderator for the next 90 minutes. As always, I want to begin this event by honoring and acknowledging Mohkinstsis and the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Stoney Nakoda nations comprised of the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina Nation. I acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. Finally, I acknowledge all nations, Indigenous and non, who live, work, and play on this land and who honor and celebrate this territory. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us today. We are excited to share insights from the latest results of Stone Olofsson's longitudinal study on the experience economy. Stone Olofsson has been conducting this research since May 2020 in partnership with organizations like Active City, Calgary Arts Development, Explore Edmonton, and Tourism Calgary to help our communities understand why and how people attend and interact with experiences. Research that was born out of necessity due to COVID remains relevant to experience providers today. For those of you joining us for the first time, the New Economy Live series was created to bring together members of the public to learn about our city's economic strategy, Calgary in the New Economy. The events in this series are free of charge to make sure they are as accessible to as many people as possible, underpinned by the latest research on a topic relevant to our city, and feature truly inspiring speakers and panelists. And given today's lineup, I'm confident we've delivered. The vision of Calgary in the New Economy is for Calgary to be the place where bright minds and big ideas come together with an unmatched spirit to help solve global challenges. A place that stands out not because we have all the answers, but because we're willing to help each other find them. That's the city we are building together, and the strategy is truly our community's strategy. Our event today will begin with a presentation by Kim Griffin from Stone Olofsson on the winter 2023 findings of the new experience economy research. This is the 10th phase of this research, and we're excited to share it with you today. Following Kim's presentation, we will be joined by 4 incredible panelists from Theatre Calgary, Calgary Arts Development, TELUS Spark, and Winsport for a full hour of discussion and audience Q&A about the implications of this research for Calgary's experience providers and the shifts and changes they are seeing and how what experience audiences expect from experiences in Calgary. We do have some prepared questions for the panelists, but I'd encourage them to chime in at any time to make this more of a discussion rather than an interview. For today's event, you can post a question using the Q&A function in Zoom, and you can upvote questions from other attendees and audience members, and we will aim to tackle as many as we can in the allotted time. This event also has closed captions, a link which was provided in the chat, and the link we'll repost it if you need to access it throughout the event. With that, I will introduce Kim Griffin, and we can get this event started. Kim is a senior consultant at Stone Olofsson, a Calgary-based research consulting firm. Although she has a degree in international relations, it wasn't long before things took a sharp turn and Kim found a home in market research. She learned quickly that the best business decisions are made using a fact-based approach. She works from the belief that research is not about collecting numbers and providing reams of charts. It's really all about engaging audiences with the story behind the numbers. In 15 years, Kim has had the pleasure of working with fantastic clients across a number of sectors, including retail, entertainment, tourism and hospitality, charities, and government. Over to you, Kim.
Great. Thank you very much, Kate. And I'm delighted to be here with an incredible slate of panelists. And so what I'd like to talk to you about today is what Kate already alluded to. And this is some research that we've done collectively with the community that I think is really important to continue sharing. So next slide. We can go to the next slide. Perfect. Kate already touched on some of our generous supporters, but I'd be remiss if I didn't start today by acknowledging them. This is a community resource that is only possible because we have community partners on board. So thank you again. Now, the experience economy, as we all know, it's really about bringing people together and providing those unique and memorable experiences wherever they might be. Here in Alberta, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, so it is important to our economy but also to our quality of life. As we all know, this was completely upended in 2020, and the dust is still settling. We can probably feel that in our own lives, but also in your day-to-day work with the businesses and the organizations that you're involved in. As Kate already touched on, this is a research initiative that got off the ground in 2020 as a truly a collaborative and community resource. It was rooted in the pandemic, but circumstances and conditions have obviously changed dramatically since then. But our goal is still the same. We saw a need then, and we continue to see a need now to support leaders in our industries, in our province, in our city here, with facts about the market and facts about audiences. And this includes everything from motivations to engaging in the experience economy, behaviors, messaging opportunities, and the like. So as already was mentioned, we've done 10 phases of work on this topic. And so it's evolved as time has gone on. The last phase of work, and the work I'm going to share with you today, while also bringing in portions from the rest of the work, was conducted in January of this year. So for this phase of work, we did 1,000 completed surveys, 500 in Calgary, 500 in Edmonton. Now, there are some small differences across the rest of the province. We did do that work for some time, but it's not material. And so our focus today, given that this is a CED event, is specifically on Calgary. Next. Now, any research in a vacuum really misses the mark. It's really important to always take into account the contexts which you are working within. Now, our obvious context for the last 3 years has been COVID, everything about it. Now, that's shifted a little bit, but there are still some important elements that we have to keep in mind as we interpret these results and look at what's going on in our community. Now, mandatory public health measures have obviously softened. COVID is kind of less of a presence for sure, but this was still a season of illness in this past winter and even coming into this spring. Illnesses, viruses, they've been widespread. They're going to have an impact on consumer behavior. We can't ignore that, especially with how we've kind of been kicked around by COVID the last 3 years. So that's really important to keep in mind. Uncertainty, that's a really poignant word to use, I think. This is a sentiment that certainly was kickstarted in COVID or with COVID, but really has not gone away. We have a shaky political climate, we've got economic concerns, supply chain issues, all of these things. And again, you probably feel these in your own lives, but also in your businesses. Uncertainty is really the name of the game, which really brings us to economic conditions, which remain very challenging. Certainly we have inflationary pressures, higher cost of living, but one really important statistic to note is that 28% of the Alberta market has told us that they've reported a sustained decrease in household income since the start of COVID. That's really significant. That is about a third of the market that says I've either lost income or my income has been stagnant while prices are rising. And so right away, you can start to see how that pressure impacts consumer wallets. We also have 6.6 unemployment here in Calgary right now. For the longest time, Calgary and Alberta specifically have weathered unique economic conditions, but we've always been a bit of an outlier. And now that's the highest rate in Canada. So while certainly things are improving and there's some positive markers, that's something that we're grappling with that really impacts how we think about our experience economy. And then finally, consumer trends. This is not a new thing, but DEI, sustainability, customization, digitization, all of these phrases and topics that no doubt everyone here is dealing with in their businesses all continue to shape consumer trends and how our audiences engage with the experience economy. So I wanted to point that out before we dive into the research because these elements are really, truly important. Next slide. So if I talked about an uncertain market, we know that we have a lot of hesitancy and it's being fueled by a lot of things outside of comfort. Next slide. Now, if you've been following this work with us for some time now, you'll know that comfort with respect to crowds is a new metric that we really had to pay attention to in COVID. It's not something in my 15 years of research that we've ever really looked at. It became really, really important in COVID. And so what we're seeing today with respect to how comfortable are people with crowds or with large groups of people, comfort's quite high. 42% of the Calgary market says I'm very comfortable with large groups of people. You've got a large chunk who kind of sit in that middle who say, yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with crowds. And only about 10, 11% that say, no, I'm still not comfortable in crowds. I prefer my own groups. Next slide. Now, what we've seen since this project began, not predictably, is that as COVID has come and gone and waves have gone up and down, comfort levels dipped and increased accordingly. So next. Now, as news of the pandemic becomes less prominent in the media and we learn to live with it, with our current circumstances, we've seen comfort really take off. Now, is one of the questions we get asked, is this what comfort was before? And the reality is we don't know that, because as I've mentioned, this isn't something we looked at before, but we can make the assumption this is probably kind of a quote unquote normal comfort level. So we know comfort is pretty high. People are pretty comfortable with groups of people. Next slide. But there's something else in play here. And this is where we start to look at hesitancy or eagerness. So we know that comfort is high, but we see that when we look at a different metric, which we're calling eagerness to engage, things shift a little bit. So 37% of the Calgary market says, I can't wait to get out there. I have no hesitation at all in getting involved in activities and experiences, but that's not as high as comfort. There's a large portion that says that they do go out, but they're still hesitant or apprehensive. And then about 14, 15% that's feeling quite hesitant. So this doesn't align in quite with comfort. And so the question is, what's going on here? Next slide. And one of the things, not surprisingly, that we're finding is hesitancy right now really centers around affordability. You've got 53% of the Calgary market that says, I just don't want to spend money right now. And we think about the context, as I touched on earlier, this starts to make sense. 44%, I can't afford to go and do things. These are significant portions of the population. Now, there's other reasons here. We have a good portion of the market who says, I'm still trying to avoid getting sick. So that's kind of a lingering hangover from COVID that we have to be mindful of. And then there's other reasons. 30% say, I'm just busy. We have other reasons I'm not showing here today that focus on it's not worth it, or I'm tired, or I don't enjoy it. So this kind of idea that there's still a loss of enjoyment or interest in some of the things people used to like to do. Change in interest means our market is changing. So affordability, yes, but there's some other things to keep in mind as well. Next slide. Now, when we have a hesitant market, this leads to audiences who become more selective, and those things are different. So 79% of the Calgary market says I'm much more selective about the experiences I'm willing to spend my time and my money on. That's a high number, and we really need to unpack that. Next slide. So if we know that hesitancy centers around that affordability piece, selectiveness is a little bit more multifaceted. Now, cost is still a factor. 68% say I have limited money to spend on activities. So that affordability piece is still the largest factor that we really need to be mindful of. But we've got significant portions that say I have limited time right now, or I don't have the energy. So I touched on that with hesitancy, but it's more pronounced here with it when it comes to being selective. We also have a portion that say my interests have shifted over time. So time and energy, the feelings of exhaustion and stress are still there in our marketplace. And those are hampering decision-making. We also have 24% of the market who say the quality of what I like to do has gone down. And we're going to come back to this. That might not seem like a huge number, but a quarter of the market that say, I'm not choosing things because I don't like the quality of the experience is really, really important to pay attention to. Next slide. All right, so if I were to sum this up, we know that we've got some hesitancy in the market, and we know it's now fueled by more than just COVID. This is our new baseline. The lingering impacts of the pandemic are still just beginning to be understood. But we've got a lot of things in play. And if we are going to overcome this hesitancy that we know in the market, we're going to have to change customer behaviors. It has to be worth it for the consumer. How do you make it worth it? Well, budget considerations need to be overcome, showing value and flexibility. The promise of the experience that you're offering needs to be very, very clear so audience can see what's in it for them. And you do need to continue to build comfort. This might look different than it was 2 years ago, but it's still something to think about. Next slide. So if we have audiences who we know right now are less likely to take risks, that means the quality of our experiences I've touched on really matters. Next slide. So we asked this question directly to consumers. What happens if you have a poor experience at an event or an attraction or in any type of experience? Next, and then next. So we've got 22% who say there's no way I'd return. That's 22% of your market who could be considered lost customers. And those are always harder to bring back. Now, we've got over 50% who would need some convincing. So there's a portion that say, I'd think about going back, but I'd also explore new things. And then another portion would say, I'm only going to go back if there's a deal to entice me. What the purpose of showing you these numbers is to show the importance of that experience, right? And this is all facets. This is the ease of purchasing a ticket, accessing the experience, it's the service elements at the experience, all of those things collectively. Next slide. So to really drill this home, there's a couple things I want to point out here. We know Albertans are still selective. I've talked about that, but they're also non-committal with their activities. So next. You have, 2/3 of the market who say, I've overcome worries about getting sick in order to do the things I like to do. This is important. It shows how prominent that feeling was, right? And so our market's getting to a good place, but it's still that comfort and hesitancy is still kind of bubbling under the surface. There's still nerves about crowd. Over half of the market in Calgary says since the pandemic, I'm less interested in being in crowds. So yes, you're going to see pictures of events that are packed full and that are sold out. But collectively, over half of the market is saying, I'm just not that comfortable being around people. Some of that is COVID and illness. Some of that is just we've got used to having a bit more space around us. And so returning to crowded conditions just maybe isn't as appealing. Next. Affordability. I've touched on this already and we'll continue to look at it. 65% of the market says, I just simply can't afford to do the things I used to enjoy. And then finally, next. This is really important. We've got 3/4 of the market who say I'd rather do one-time or single activities than a subscription or register for something spread out over time. This is a massive impact on the decision-making journey. We have shortened windows for decision-making, and our customers are telling us they prefer less commitment right now. So if you're offering an event or an experience that runs September to June or year-round and you're finding that a bit more challenging to kind of get commitment from your audience, this might be why, right? There's a bit more appetite for shorter, bite-sized experiences where we don't have to be as committed. And that might be some of those hesitancy reasons, or it might be affordability, right? I just can't afford to commit that length of time. But the end result is we've got a market that's still selective and non-committal. And that's going to impact a lot of what you're doing in your decision-making as an organization. Next slide. So we've got an audience, as we know, that is less likely to take risks. Decision makers are much less likely to wing it anymore when it comes to doing the things that they want to do. We're tentative, we're deliberate. So that's a challenge for organizations. There really truly is little room for error. Turning your guests or your customers into coming to you, first of all, and then also repeat customers means mastering the spectrum of experiences people have. So making it easy is critical. Those clear promises I already talked about, avoiding complex offers, but also eliminating hassles, right? Flexibility on booking or canceling, service elements, access issues. All of these things need to be taken into account when you've got a kind of a really picky customer base right now. So if we've talked about affordability to this point so much, it's worth diving in a little bit on this topic and understanding spending in a greater detail. Next slide. So let's take a little peek at this. The question is quite simply, what do customers say that they are spending? Now, this is perception, so it may not reflect your actual bank statements, but it's a really good gauge to where customers are tending to budget or lean in with their dollars. What's really interesting right off the mark is that you've got over half of consumer spend going to living expenses and consumer debt. Now, when we think about those contexts again, and rising costs and real and perceived, this is a significant chunk of a household budget. So already we know that customers and their household incomes are squeezed. Now, when it comes to activities and experiences, collectively, this is making up only 6% of a household budget. Next. So when we take that to real dollars with what we asked our customers in this survey, that kind of nets out for an average Calgary household, so this is not universal by any means, but only about $230 per month spent on activities and just shy of $3,000 a year. That's not a tremendous amount of money, but then it starts to crystallize this idea that, okay, our customers are being squeezed and they're being more deliberate with their dollars. Now, we loosely mapped this back in the survey, and I'm not going to show you that today, to StatsCan data to give it a measure of validity, and it does roughly map back. So this isn't real dollars per se, as I mentioned, but this starts to crystallize and give you a guide to where people are putting their money. Next slide. And when we have spending habits that have changed, it means that how we think about money has also shifted. So the willingness to spend is there. 84% said, I'm willing to spend if I find an activity that's particular, unique, or appealing. So again, experience is key here. If the experience falls short or it's not worth it, people don't want to put their money there. They will if it's worth it. Next. And next again. We've got a good portion of the market that's still working with a budget. 53%, I've got a specific amount, I pick and choose. When we think about the offerings that are out there, the availability of things to do, and the emergence of new things to do that kind of popped up in COVID out of necessity, we're jamming a lot of considerations out of a smaller budget. So that's really important to consider. We've got a good portion of the market that just loves the deal, so they can be enticed with promotions. And next. And then we've got other reasonable proportions of the market that are looking at price alone, or at least as a huge component. I choose what I do based on price alone, or I'll choose an activity if the price is right. So all of this to say these attitudes start to crystallize this theme on affordability and spending, on how our maybe spending is condensed or our wallets are a bit squeezed. Next. So the takeaway here is that the economics of experience have changed. We all know this intuitively. You likely feel it in your day-to-day, and you likely feel it in your businesses. But there's no question that market conditions have suppressed spending in the experienced economy. We know, and I've touched on this, experience economy is a valuable diversification of the provincial economy. It generates billions in consumer spending in the market. So this is a sector that's seriously being challenged right now. And showing value, not just related to cost, is really more important than ever. How do you do that? Again, you look at your promotional and your pricing plans. You ask yourself if they're in sync with the market, first of all, but also your audience as you understand it to be. And again, I said this a couple times, but are the benefits clear? Sectors who can show the benefits of your experience, not just the features, not just exactly what it offers, but what they get out of it, tend to outperform other sectors. So those are some really important considerations. Okay, we've talked about this idea of the experience economy generating billions of dollars for the economy. And the reality is that Calgarians and Albertans are truly experienced consumers. And what we mean by that is, early on, our research showed us that rarely do you have an audience or a consumer that sits in one vertical. So you don't just have arts consumers or sports consumers. You might have a preference for one type of event or experience over the other, but Calgarians have shown us that they really are experienced consumers above all else. And so the question might be, what are the collaboration opportunities? And collaboration is a word that gets tossed around a lot, I know, but it's an important word. And it's never been more important than it is now, kind of on the back end of COVID and what it means for our experience economy. So next slide. So we wanted to take this work and make it really tangible for the organizations that were accessing it. And so we asked our audiences, if you could create a promotional package by selecting 4 activities or events, what would you put together? Now, this is by no means designed to be an exhaustive list or the silver bullet for anyone here today. We presented them with a lengthy but a curated list, right? So there are some limitations, but I do want you to think about this as a guide to what might be possible. Next slide. So when we ask which activities Calgarians do want is included in kind of a package deal, you see right at the top of the list, we have dining at their preferred restaurant by a large margin. And the reasons for this are fairly self-explanatory. First of all, it's easy. It's something that we really missed in the early days of COVID, just going out to eat. Everybody needs to eat, so it's simple again, and it's got this social element. We all enjoy sharing a meal with friends or with family. And so just simply dining out ticks a lot of boxes when it comes to the experience economy and when it comes to our motivations for getting out there and doing things. Beyond that, you can start to see some of the kind of maybe more known attractions in our city come to the top of the list. Tickets to a concert, the Calgary Zoo, the Calgary Flames game. Then you have things like local theater, stay at a local hotel, and down the list from there. Next. Beyond that, there's some kind of more quote unquote niche events here that are being shown. But again, as I mentioned earlier, this isn't meant to be a definitive guide to creating packages. What this is meant to showcase is the wide variety of interests that people have in our city and what's possible. Next slide. And this really brings it home. We have varied interests in different activities. This is truly a reminder of the interconnectedness of our experience economy. So when we take those items on that previous page and we net them up to kind of broad-based categories like arts and culture, food, beverage, hotel, attractions, professional sports. Next, we see that in terms of what people selected is quite varied. 74% of Calgarians selected from more than one category. So this, again, really crystallizes something I've been saying here, which is that the experience economy is interconnected and it is about shared experiences. So to my earlier point, not a definitive guide to what people necessarily want. It starts to guide the types of things that they want. The takeaway here is do consider looking outside your sector for collaboration efforts. Consumers have indicated that they want to try different things. And there's a lot of cross-category opportunities that would interest them if it was provided to them. Next slide. Now, it's one thing and a lot of organizations will ask that question, what do you like or what do you want? Organizations often tell us, well, people told us that they wanted this, but they didn't come. They didn't buy it after all. What's going on there? And this is a really important reminder to us that experiences are all encompassing and interest can be very different from intent. And there are a lot of reasons for that. So when we asked the market, how likely would you be to purchase this package that you yourself built? 78% say I'd be at least somewhat likely to purchase it. So that's positive. But when you look down at the numbers, only 11% say, yeah, definitely, I'm all in. So there's some hesitancy on something that they already built. And we want to know why that is. And next, and the reality is, as I mentioned, interest is not always going to line up with intent. A lot of that has to do with the ability to spend. You can put it together, but it might be too expensive. Or you can put it together, but I might have no time to do this. So all of those other elements or reasons I touched on earlier around hesitancy and selectiveness still are in play. So this is just a reminder that interest isn't always the same as purchase behavior. And we need to keep that in mind and plan accordingly. Now, we did ask them to price out their activities. And again, just a guideline. On the individual basis, if you were to put 4 activities in a package, Calgarians are expecting to pay just shy of $200. For a group of 4, they expect bigger cost savings at just over $600. So just some things to think about as you build out your pricing and your packaging and your programming in whatever sector you're working on. Next slide. So collaboration, it cannot be overlooked. The mix of experiences here reminds us consumers are considering a wide variety of things. So do consider engaging your audience with that mix of experiences if it's available to you. This shows uniqueness, but it also shows more value for money, right? And that's really important to consider as you think about your programming going forward. Next slide. That is a very, very quick overview of the data that we've collected this wave, and I think what you can use it for in your day-to-day work and in your business. But I do want to leave you with a couple takeaways as you think about how do I make sense of this and where do I pull it all together? So next slide. So the big thing to remind ourselves here is audiences are settling into a new decision journey. It is different. We feel it, we know it to be true, the data bears that out. And this requires organizations to adjust. So what can we do? Well, the first thing you can think about is making it easy. We know customers are much less committed. Making it easy is now kind of table stakes. It's really fundamental. Anything that is perceived as a barrier is going to hamper your engagement. So what does that mean for you? Well, eliminating the hassle so consumers can really see a clear path to attendance, simplifying your messages, and making promotional offers, packages really clear and easy. Consumers will do the math, so make it simple for them. Next, make it attractive. This is probably pretty obvious. Everyone out there, if you're in a marketing position or anything of the like, you are trying to do this. But decision makers, people that are purchasing experiences, really need to see the benefits. Some sectors do this better than others. Tapping into the motivations remains critically important. Why do people do things, and why do they visit you, or why do they engage with your organization? The why still really matters. Elevating those emotional connections is really, really important. Will help you stand out from the crowd. Next. Social. This is an inherent motivation to engaging in the experience economy. We've seen this from way back when. The social elements are multifaceted, but leveraging that human connection is really, really important. Next. And then finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention timing, right? There's that gap between intentions and behavior. That decision-making window is shifting and getting shorter. So you need to be prepared for that, either through be ready for last-minute decisions, incentivize your audiences, or offer them some planning tools that can help with this. So these are just some simple things I think that some organizations can implement to help work through this new decision journey. Next. And so that's where I'll leave us today. If you have more interest in this particular research, previous phases, or this one here, you can contact me or my team, or scan the QR code to get more information. So thank you very much for listening to me today.
Thank you so much, Kim, for that presentation. I'm really excited to dig into the research with the panelists now. I'm going to introduce our panelists now. And first up, we have Maya Cholden, Executive Director of Theatre Calgary. Maya has been an executive leader for performing arts organizations for over a decade. She began her tenure at Theatre Calgary in November 2020, during what she presumed, and I feel like we all presumed, would be the latter portion of the COVID-19 pandemic. How wrong we were. Previously, she served as the managing director for the groundbreaking Pig Iron Theatre Company. During those 7 years, she produced 8 world premieres on every conceivable scale, from 1,100-seat concert venues to 40-seat cabarets. Maya has forged collaborations with partner organizations from arts museums to rock bands, expanding what is possible in live performance and building a new generation of audiences. Prior to Pig Iron, she was the general manager of Pennsylvania Ballet, where she managed the construction of their new artistic home and their first international tour. At George Mason University's Hilton Performing Arts Center, Maya supervised the final stages of the facility construction, its inauguration, and initial occupancy. She also created the framework for George Mason's unique facility to serve its mission, presenting world-class artists while simultaneously serving as a hub for community constituents. She spent 6 years at the Kimmel Center in varied production management roles, supervising events and labor contracts towards successful presentations. A former member of the Directors Guild of America, she has been an assistant director in film and television, working on set to bring major features and commercials to the screen. Maya has also managed productions and projects at Opera Philadelphia, the Mann Center, and Fringe Arts. An Alberta native, Maya attended Mount Allison University and was awarded the Catherine Shaw Bigelow Award in recognition of her contributions to the theater department. In the fall of 2019, Maya attended Art Equity Facilitator training to deepen her commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion in the arts. To stay close to her roots while in the States, Maya was an active member of the Bucks County Curling Club and currently curls at North Hill Curling Club. That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Maya. Next, I want to introduce Patty Pond, President and CEO of Calgary Arts Development. Calgary Arts Development, Patty Pond is a veteran community and arts champion with an extensive track record of leadership and service in Calgary and beyond. Patty has a deep and diverse experience in the arts sector. She came to the position of President and CEO following her position as Director of Resource Development at Calgary Arts Development. Prior to working at Calgary Arts Development, Patty held a number of senior leadership roles in arts organizations, primarily in Alberta. Her community service includes being a board member for the Agora Foundation, publisher of the Philanthropist Journal, chairing the program committee for the Action Chinese Canadians Together National Leaders Summit 2019. 2021 and 2023, and is the first woman of color elected to the board of the Calgary Stampede. Patty has been awarded the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal, as well as the 2013 Harry and Martha Cohen Award, recognizing significant contribution to Calgary's theater community. In 2021, Patty was deeply honored to be gifted the Blackfoot name Mista Motsamiaki, two-standing headdress woman. And earlier this year, Patty was a recipient of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Medal. Welcome, Patty. Thanks so much. Next up, we have Roderick Tate. Roderick Tate is the interim president and CEO of TELUS Spark. Roderick was appointed interim CEO at TELUS Spark Science Center in January of 2023. Rod is a creative executive leader with more than 20 years of experience in development and execution of world-class attractions and events. He joined TELUS Spark in 2021 as Chief Experience Officer, where he built a solid vision and strategy for executing world-class guest experiences at Spark. Prior to joining the Spark team, Roderick provided the strategic direction for delivery of all entertainment programming as part of the annual Calgary Stampede. Roderick is a musician and performer by trade. His musical talents and years in the entertainment industry and strategic leadership of large-scale attraction and events have culminated into his vision and mission for delivering extraordinary guest experiences and high-performance teams. Thanks so much for being here today, Roderick. And finally, we have Jennifer Konopacki, the Vice President of Sport at WinSport. Jennifer is a bold, dynamic leader with proven results in growing leaders, businesses, and communities. She is a people-oriented, community-minded, enthusiastic individual with vision. Her diverse background includes contributions in sport business, administration, and systems change. Through her career, she has gained an intimate understanding of the Canadian sport system and sport excellence at its best. Jennifer's strong leadership, ability to direct new business opportunities, and improve overall performance levels has allowed her to make various contributions at a local and national sport level. She has a degree in physical education and recreation studies from the University of Manitoba and her executive leadership education from Queen's University's Smith School of Business. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for being here with us today. So, after listening to Kim's presentation on the latest research on the new experience economy, and of course, the fact that you are all so immersed every day in that experience economy, my first question to all of you is, what was surprising or interesting to you about the findings that Kim shared? What were some interesting shifts or changes that spoke to you coming out of the research? And I'll start with you, Maya.
Well, we have been closely following Stone Olafson's work since I showed up in Calgary, and I have found that it's been a pretty consistent, depending on when the surveying is happening in regards to a spike. It's been fairly consistent along the way to show a corresponding increasing comfort level for people to be coming back to in communion with each other as we have as the vaccines have been rolled out, and that has matched entirely with our experience with our audience. What I didn't see in this one, but I do recall in the previous surveys, is an age specific version of when people are gonna be comfortable to return. And what I've noticed is that some of our older patrons at TC are not returning to become regular consumers of Theatre Calgary, but rather picking and choosing their shows. And it turns out that I think that some of our older patrons are maybe never going to return to become subscribers, and rather are going to end up being one-off experiential consumers. And though that makes sense, it has then put us into hypersonic super speed to solicit and find new audiences.
Yeah, really interesting there about the age demographic shifts you're seeing. Maybe I'll go next to Patty. What was surprising or interesting to you about those research findings?
Well, because we were involved in part of the group cohort that's been encouraging this work, there are so many surprises that have happened over I think we're on number 8. Is this the 8th phase of research that we intend? Like when we started this, it was like 3 months max. And here we are 3 years later. And what the research is telling us is that while the drop off on participation at the beginning of COVID was instant, the return of participation and the way in which people return is really a long game. And, for many of you who are involved in the experience economy and providing these terrific opportunities for folks, I am with you in solidarity about how hard and how overwhelming this is. And that there does not appear to be an easy answer. When Kim talks about partnership and collaboration and interest versus intent and how you have to be clear, that's all really hard. It's not simple. And then to add to that, oh, and by the way, it's even more last minute than it was before in the decision making. So I guess I don't know if this is a surprise so much, Kate, as much as a solidarity. We're all in this together, and this is a long game. This is about our ability to make iterative changes as we go along. I think this is about not get perfect. It's not the perfect package we're going to put together, or we're going to do all of the planning and the budgeting and the marketing campaigns and all those things and wait for the right time for the right campaign. This is ongoing, real-time, consistent effort, trying to get through all the noise. And so as communities, as a city, as a sector, however you want to include yourself, how might we do that? And I will say, my optimism is there is strength in numbers. If you are a collaborator now, double down. If you haven't done partnerships before, start looking around in your community. Who advertises in your programs? Who are the neighbors in the areas where you offer these experiences? How might you create those kinds of shared experiences? And so I don't know. I don't know if that's a surprise, Kate, as much as me getting on my soapbox already. Thanks.
No, I love that. Thanks so much for that, Patty. And we'll get a lot more into collaboration. And Roderick, I saw you nodding your head quite a lot, so maybe I'll go to you next.
Well, absolutely. Just to build on kind of what Patty was saying there, it's, from my perspective, I don't know that the research is so surprising because I think we're all experiencing it. That's for sure. And we definitely are seeing a gradual return. And so I think you have to be patient and committed. But again, it also demonstrates that we need to be nimble as organizations in how we present and share what it is that we do, but also looking to the collective support of each other. We've been spending a lot of time thinking about, organizationally from our vantage point, how do we demonstrate support not only for the community more holistically, but how do we get involved in some of the other activities that are happening throughout the community? And it's been successful for us as people are, they're taking note. They're seeing us as a collection of activities and things that are happening in the city, and just reminding them, hey, we're open for business and we have some amazing things here. Again, though, when you get that discerning also challenge that layered on top of the economic challenges, perhaps that some of our audiences are facing from a financial perspective, and the downward pressure of the economy, then you have to start to think about, well, how can I be appealing in this environment as well? So, it's kind of a dual-edged sword, or a double whammy, maybe is the better way to put it, in that, your audience is expecting amazing things from you, yet the audience hasn't fully returned to be able to allow for you to support that kind of investment. So you have to get creative, you have to be thoughtful, and you have to make sure that you know who the audience is that you're after, and how do you, again, position yourself to show that value that's going to, get them making that decision to come and participate and get out there.
For sure. No doubt there's a double-edged sword, right? You want to put on these incredible experiences, but you need the folks to attend to be able to do that. That's a really great point. Jennifer, last word on that question goes to you.
I really appreciated the note around the value of collaboration. So during the pandemic, we had to collaborate. We had to rely on each other. We had to pull together as an industry or a sector to, figure out the answers. And now post-pandemic, we're in this new space of being able to work with others, co-create, and collaborate, bundle our packages, our experiences. And I think that's really, that's super positive, and it creates a lot of new opportunities. I think in the spirit of collaboration, as we look to serve a diverse Calgary, we also need to know our expertise and stay in our lane, and then be able to leverage and work with others that have different expertise to create the right balanced experience, one that's informed. And so I really appreciated that coming out of the research for sure.
Yeah, that's a great segue, like that you teed up my next question about collaboration. And for me, I think two findings really stuck out to me. The first being that experience goers are looking for value and variety in their experience. I feel like we knew, as Rod said, we kind of all know that people are looking for affordable experiences and also really great experiences, but also that folks can do things on their own and are also opting for kind of self-directed experiences. So how do we use collaboration as a tool, and also working across the different disciplines that we have on the panel today to provide those high impact, high value experiences? And then I want to talk a little bit about tackling that competition between scheduled experiences that are out of home and self-directed programming that people can do themselves. So yeah.
I don't know if you're going to go with me next, but I do want to just say one thing, which is if you look in, so sorry, Kate, but I do want to address that question, which is if you look at the further into the Stone Olofson survey, there's a question that is asked that's I have it right in front of me. It's, I prefer activities I can do by myself on one end of the scale, and the other end of the scale is I prefer activities I can do with friends and family and other people. And that scale is very much pushes to with other people. So though we can all, you can say going to the movies is self-directed and with other people, the majority of with other people is not sitting on your couch watching Netflix. I think the doing things with other people, going to an exhibit at Telespark, playing a sport, or coming to the theater is something that people do scheduled. They do it in communion with their community, and they do it because they're looking to share an experience. And I think shared experiences do drive people's decision-making as much as it's just because there's a lot of time that we do spend, like I used to say during COVID that there's a, Maya-shaped butt print on my sofa because there really was. Like I couldn't imagine having spent more time sitting on my sofa. But at the end of the day, people are meant to be with other humans, whether they're friends, family, or strangers, because it's that relational experience that drives our, not everyone, but drives many of, fills our bucket a little bit, even if it's sitting next to a stranger. So it kind of like, I don't know that we're all looking for something without a time start and they can do on your own. And I don't know that Stone Olofson's survey holds that to be true. So that's the only thing I wanted to say.
That's great. Reactions from others on that, self-directed versus I like that time start.
Well, maybe I'll just chime in kind of from my perspective and how I think of it. I would agree that not everybody's looking for those time start, but it's just about managing, making it easy. First off, I mean, again, that's overt. That's through the survey. That's there. And if you're making it easy enough for your guests to find a time, they will find self-directed opportunities to come and visit you based on their schedule. It's kind of how we think of it. But it's also just reminding them of the fact that we offer that. And so, when you're thinking about how you're positioning your products, your programs, and whatnot, it's trying to create that space for the opportunity to come, and then reminding them of the fact that you do have that flexibility and that ability, but even going to them when they're participating in perhaps a timed activity, again, back to that collaborative sort of environment, it's looking for those partners or other platforms in which you can start to speak to the broader consumers and saying, hey, you like this, you'll like this too. And just reminding them that there is this whole breadth of experience that Calgary has to offer. It doesn't matter what it is. And making sure though that they see the value or their connection to what it is that you have to offer, and that it's again is worthwhile for them to take the time. So I think there is a balance there. I think people are interested, and to Maya's point, people want to connect. They want to see each other. You know, after coming out of the pandemic, there's no doubt about it. We're seeing it that people will come so long as they have a flexible environment in which they can choose when and how they want to participate.
Jennifer, Patty?
Sure, I'll go. Not sure this is going to directly answer your question, Kate. Sorry, welcome to Thursday. But I think the thing with choice, right? So just yesterday, I reported as a civic partner to the city of Calgary and a council, a committee of council. And what we reported for 2022, so keeping in mind, we were just coming out of the pandemic, the organizations that CADA invested in only. So Calgary Arts Development is the city's arm's length entity for investing in arts and culture organizations and artists. So just in 2022 alone, we gave out 676 grants. Those 676 grants resulted in over 23,000 events, activities, conferences, gatherings, conversations over the course of 2022 for over 4 million participations. So that's audience or attendees. So we know multiple times over. So again, in the spirit of hope and optimism, it's not like nobody's doing anything and that Calgarians aren't going anywhere. They are. Back to Kim's point, it's about the decision tree and the way in which they make decisions. And Kim, maybe you and I got to go talk offline about another kind of surveying, which is more specifically about that decision tree, because somehow 4 million Calgarians in 2022 decided they were going to take part in just the things I find. It doesn't include the Jubilee, doesn't include the Music Mile, doesn't include Debbie's Dance School, doesn't include community productions that maybe you do in your own community. So there's lots, and that might be part of the acknowledgement as well of, you know, and then here's where I say something super provocative, and we watch the Q&A box blow up. How much is too much to offer an audience? And maybe it's infinite, and it should be. That's what I love. I love the choice. We know there are more choices, and I know we'll have conversations later around equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. And so we have to ask ourselves those questions. But even within those communities, they're doing lots in their communities that don't ever involve any of us on this screen right now. So I'll just put that out there, that there is opportunity and variety for now. And what we need to do is expand on that and leverage that even more than in the case of the arts community they already do. Final thought.
Go for it. Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So I'm just reflecting on the unbelievable amount of outdoor connection that we saw during the pandemic, right? So many Calgarians moved out to the mountains. They were exploring our parks. They were enjoying the connection. We all know the health benefits of that aspect. So when we're talking about self-directed, doing things on our own, I think that's something that we really experience that we can carry forward moving forward. Parents want their kids to connect to the outdoors, right? We know the research shows how powerful it is mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I think there's, back to the other point around collaboration, opportunities for multiple groups to work together to see how we're creating these experiences where we have indoor and outdoor points that create that overall experience, which society showed us. We value creation, we value, our landscape, and we're on we're at the door of the Canadian Rockies, right? So how are we really looking at that as part of the bigger fabric and opportunity that we have, and truly what people need?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, when you said people really value creation, and I'm thinking kind of unique, original production, we don't have time to go into this, but my mind immediately went to AI, but that's a separate conversation for today. But it immediately, like I think nothing can really replace the outdoors and really experiencing original art and culture. So that's a really fantastic point too, Jennifer. Maya, I have a question specifically for you about the exciting work happening at Theatre Calgary. And Patty alluded to this point about expanding our offerings and getting more innovative. So I'd love for you to speak a little bit about what you've been doing to innovate on what traditional theater looks like, and how is Theatre Calgary really trying to push the boundaries and open up and expand the offerings?
So I think that an interesting thing about theater's been around since the dawn of time. People have been telling stories. Theater is storytelling. So when has there been a time when people are not telling stories? And the innovation that you can offer within this field is it's infinite. But there was a sentence that Kim used that I pulled out in this version of the presentation that I have keyed in on, and it is the promise of the experience. And for me, it's realizing, and we talk about it in different ways all the time, but it's realizing that an audience member who is going to risk their time, their very limited resources, as we just, we're discussing the fact that there isn't that much free discretionary money that most Albertans have right now, and the expended effort of making a plan, they're going to go only if they feel like that promise is going to be met. So that does not necessarily mean that I'm going to do, to use my artistic director's favorite phrase, the Bobo show, just like some random show that nobody's ever heard of, because that it does not necessarily meet the risk factor that folks are looking to go to. So the way that we're expanding our offerings is we're in reaction to all this information, we're going into next season with a new pricing plan that we hope is going to be more accessible for more people, and a season that we are internally calling the season of smiles, but it's theater for all. And the idea being that this is a place where everyone's welcome. There's a way for everyone to access it. No matter the barrier, we will try and remove it for you. And you will have, that promise will be met. That promise of the experience will be met. You'll have a great time, and you will feel like there's a value that you have that has been met, both financially and of your personal expenditure of your time, which people have so little of. So, and I think that that's what everyone's been trying to do, but I think we're concentrating on that exclusively right now, meeting that promise.
I really like that. Any thoughts from the other panelists? I was just writing down the pricing plan and theater for all. So if any thoughts or comments on rethinking a pricing model, making sure that our experiences are accessible.
Maybe I'll chime in. I mean, again, I think obviously understanding and providing opportunities for all Calgarians and the community more holistically to be able to participate is key. And finding those mechanisms, whatever your business or organization is going to be different, whether it's a pricing model or a promotional model. You have to think about that and how it fits to make sure that you can continue to deliver the business on a regular basis. But I think it's also to understanding the promise, I think, and I like how Maya put it out there, is recognizing what actually the expectations of the broader audience are. And so, again, some of the thinking that we're doing is is trying to hit the widest audience we possibly can with the products and programs that we put out there. We do have some that are more niche, but really it's so that everybody in the entire community can see themselves in what it is being shared or presented as part of our part of our annual programming. And really, if you take it and you think about it, welcoming to all, I'm 100%, 110% in behind that, because it demonstrates a new place for people to come, understand different perspectives, but feel and see themselves in what it is that you're sharing, which just opens up that connection point for others to communicate. And again, the unique thing that we lost during COVID was that opportunity to connect with each other, at least in that physical presence, but to welcome conversation and encourage, dialogue between each other. And so if we can make it again, create spaces that are welcoming for everyone through the products and programs and attract them to come together, those conversations are starting to happen. And again, it adds to that depth of what the experience is and hopefully delivers against the promise that Maya's suggesting. There's so many elements that fit into that, whether it's, again, the bright, shiny lights that you put out there, but it's also into that depth of the conversation that happened post or even during the experience that we're trying to think about. And that's, again, about delivering value against what people are coming to see. So, again, there's so many different facets that we need to consider, making it accessible first and foremost, but also making sure that it resonates within the broader community is so essential, and thinking about how each of those pieces come together.
Thanks, Ron. Jennifer.
So Theatre for All, we also have just launched WinSport for All, and concept being at no cost or marginal, work with community partners, funders, donors to be able to target marginalized groups in Calgary. So all children, all youth can have an opportunity to experience the power of sport. You can't do that without partnership. And I think, and also partnering with the agencies, like the newcomer agencies that have those expertise as an example, right? To be able to properly address the barriers and understand the lived experiences and really be able to provide a valuable opportunity for as many people, to Roderick's point, to be able to participate and gain value and be enriched by what all of our companies and businesses have to offer our communities.
Kate, if I could just add something here. So a really good pal and my coworker, Helen Moore Parkhouse, whenever I rush into the office and go, I have an idea. First off, she tries not to make eye contact. But when I finally get her attention, her response will often be, Patty, that's a great idea. And you can have it fast, you can have it cheap, and you can have it good. But you only get 2 out of the 3. You can't have all 3. So for example, when we're talking about this theater for all or sport for all and creating these opportunities, and you try and you try and mix that with trying to reach out as broadly as you can, right? That's probably not going to be fast in terms of trying to share that message. And so I think that, like, for me, always those 3 things, trying to kind of organize those 3 things into how we might do these. And again, I would really emphasize the strength in numbers. If you're all communicating a message that is about theater for all or sport for all or whatever that is, you're reaching a much bigger market then you might be trying to do that on your own. None of us have the marketing budgets of a Nike or an international brand. What you have are small budgets, often in the tens of thousands of dollars or less a year. And so how do you stretch that? Again, knowing the decision tree that Kim has brought. And the other thing I just want to raise, and it might be a response I'd have to many of the kinds of questions that we're going to talk about today. I think part of the decision making is also working at the speed of trust. So as Calgary Arts Development, we invest grants into a number of organizations who in turn sell tickets or invite audiences or people come and visit. So if I were to look at that, do those attendees trust CADA? They don't even know who I am. other than maybe seeing a logo, but they know you because they bought a ticket to come. And so they extended a hand in trust to you. And that is, I can't emphasize Maya's point enough about this promise of the experience. And what you heard in the research from Kim, if they don't have a good experience the first time, they are not coming back. And the cost of trying to get them back will be a fortune. And so I cannot emphasize enough the importance of this time of trust that we are all coming into. And that's, Kim, again, why I think this decision-making tree, who helps people make this decision? Probably it's a neighbor or a friend or a family member. And so when you have that person in your venue, there's that moment to convey those messages about what that promise is that you're going to make to them. And it starts from the moment they buy that ticket. So the other thing I would say is information is gold. It is the new precious metal, precious gem. And so whatever you're doing now to collect information about those people who take part in your experiences, that's probably another place you need to double down. It's probably not a way you can afford to do it all by yourself. So how might we work together, like we did with the experience economy research, to try and gather that data and make it available to each other to use for the forces of good and not evil? My final thought.
That was really great contribution there. I wrote down, some key things that you said there, Patty. Trust, and trust in everything that we do as a society now. I feel like everything is founded upon trust. I could go on. I think trust is so huge on delivering on that promise, for sure, as Maya said. And I want to actually go back to you, Patty, for a question around, as I said in your intro, you have such experience in a really deep way in a lot of diverse communities in Calgary within the arts and culture scene here, on different boards, with your Blackfoot name, which is incredible. So how have you seen the arts and culture scene in Calgary shift over the past years, and whether that's unique to Calgary? But I'm really curious as to hear your thoughts on what's changing in our arts and culture kind of ecosystem.
That there are more and more people who want to offer and as Jennifer talked about, co-create and offer and share in our stories and in the ways in which we might express ourselves. And so that's related to the technology and AI, and who knows what's going to happen in that realm. We saw it during COVID with the kind of online content that was being developed over and above the online content that is already been well underway for a long, long time by everyday Calgarians. That being said, so while the distribution channel might be different, the ways in which we share it might be different. Again, to Maya's point, theater's been around. Theater's been a dying art form for basically 3,000 years, and it's still here. How we're choosing to share that message, to convey the stories, who we include in those stories that we're sharing are really important. And more, I heard this a lot yesterday at Civic Partners. We are Canada's third most diverse city from the perspective of visible minorities. And if you add invisible minorities on top of that, Calgary is a multicultural, multifaceted city. And so you put all of that into the creativity hopper, and amazing things are going to come out of it. And so it's not so much about the new forms as, because they're going to happen whether we want them to or not. Artists are artists, and they are creating all the time. It's about the platforms we create to share that and to offer that. So, even with Rod yesterday, as Rod talked about Telespark, that traditionally has been a science center. And he talked about the kinds of arts experiences that happen inside. So you have people in this room already who are trying to cross over and for Calgary Arts Development, we have a 10-year strategy called Living a Creative Life. And the hypothesis of it is super simple. How might we create the conditions where every Calgarian can live their most creative life? Most creative life. Doesn't have to be come see my show. I hope it is, as an artist or as a producer, but it could be so many other things. And we know Calgarians are super creative. We know, as Kim told you, they want to have experiences. And so I sort of see all of us in this space today as being those gardeners, those sowers of the seeds that create those conditions. And then we invite Calgarians to come and take advantage of the amazing gardens. In diversity work, I often talk about a buffet of possibilities. I hope what we can do is, as these emergent forms are being created along with the forms that have continued for thousands of years, we create this kind of garden, an array, and that is what we make Calgarians aware of. That there's this massive garden for you to choose your bouquet from. And we here, the purveyors, the keepers of those gardens, are going to do that for you, because we want you to have the fullest life in however you decide it. And I wonder if there is something that is a bigger message around the experience economy, or around the experiences offered by everybody on this call, that might be a joint effort. I don't know. Someone in our panel, we talked about Chinook Blast, right? Could that be the thin edge of the wedge to introduce Calgarians to the amazing experiences in a festival format? And then in the rest of the year in your programming, you have that kind of foundational piece that launches you and introduces you, because Chinook Blast has such a high participation rate and an awareness, and it runs for a length of time, and it doesn't have to be all you having to do that. You just focus on your part of the programming. Maybe there's something there that, and I'm thinking about it as an arts development authority. Is there something in addition to Chinook Blast? Do we do another kind of something in the spring? And then there's the Stampede in the summer, and then a something in the fall. And you use that as kind of catapults to get you going into your own programs. I don't know. I just throw that out there.
Well, could I jump on that? Because it's too good. That just speaks to it kind of summarizes a little bit some of the research. That's the interconnectedness. That's the collaboration. That's the holistic, movement that we then come together and leverage. So thanks for sharing, Patty. That was pretty wild.
I'm just going to build on it, Patty. Well put. I think it's, again, you just articulated the collaborative opportunity that exists for all of us. That's real, and put a really fine point on it. And again, it's about looking for the opportunity for us to share and showcase everything that each and every one of us does as a, gardener, I'll say, in our own gardens. And it's the breadth of what it is that this city has to offer that makes it so amazing. And I think we will fulfill, your 10-year mission for people to live their creative life. That's really what it is. And it should be inspiring across all of us to understand that we each play a distinct role in that, but it's the collection of all of that coming together that really does make this the vibrant city it truly can and should be. So anyways, thank you. I just have to, like I said, you inspire me when you say those words, because it's so true about what we're doing.
We can also scale this small, like it doesn't, and I think it's in terms of effective, fast, what is it? Good, fast, cheap? Isn't that the saying?
Yeah,
good, fast, cheap.
Fast, cheap.
It can be good and fast. maybe it won't be cheap, but reality is collaboration has opportunity to happen in small ways, scaled down very quickly. And I think about that a lot. I think about that. I know we all have different timelines in the way that we do things. Some people are planning 5 years out, some people are planning 2 years out. We have conversations all the time with other arts organizations who are like, my planning cycle is 5+ years and our planning cycle is 2+ years. So if we're discussing something that we want to do in 18 months, people are looking at us sideways if they're a 5-year planner. But I think that that with a little bit of effort, these things there can be immediate sharing of the sharing of these resources, and the benefit for organizations, the benefit for individual organizations are the access to audiences, and the benefit for Calgarians is that they can all of a sudden discover that they might be interested in, if you're a Telespark member, that you might actually also find some synergy in what we do. And if there's something that we can find, like a little wedge idea to find as a way to connect our two groups of audiences, we should be, it's a terrible word, exploiting it. I don't mean that in the bad way, I mean that in the good way.
I totally agree, Maya. The fact is, what the research says is that Calgarians are complex experience goers, right? If you're going to a Flames game, you don't just like sports. You can also be going to a Theatre Calgary production or going to the Science Center with your family, every weekend, and going to the zoo and things like that. And so I think really taking advantage of the attention of folks in your arena to then pass them on and say, we understand you like Theatre Calgary. We also understand you could also like going to Telespark, and providing those explicit connections for audience members. I want to make sure that I do ask this question of Jennifer, which is around the new day lodge at Winsport. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit with us about the execution and the planning of the day lodge, and if any kind of new or different considerations are being put into that planning that haven't been in previous projects.
So to answer that, yes and yes. It's a really exciting project for Calgary. As we all know, we've got the original infrastructure from the 88. It's end of life. And so what's going to be new with the new day lodge? We actually, we've got federal and provincial funding. So the federal funding came from a green and inclusive grant. So this building will be inclusive, it will be net zero carbon, and it will be accessible at all standards and codes. And so we're really excited about that as we're in the design process, because it has to, and it will welcome all Calgarians. We're focused on the experience around flow, right? Natural light, how our disabled users are going to be able to function in the building, what the new beginners, nobody wants to learn how to put ski boots and all that jazz on. That's not the most pleasant experience for anyone. So how are we really taking that into consideration in the design? So it's very much the user or the guest is at the heart and the center of that design. And we're building it for the next 30 years for Calgary. And we're really excited to welcome new individuals to the sport and the activity, and to new opportunities around recreation. I think the other thing, when you think about designing and building, 35, 40, 60, whatever $1 million buildings, we sometimes overbuild too, right? And I think the trend moving forward is to be dynamic in your design, have Rod's head's going, like multi-function, open space, like blank canvas that you can then learn and grow in the building for decades and be able to adjust and adapt easily. So that's also being factored into it. And really excited for the city to have this new asset.
I'm going to start checking out the audience questions, and I saw one around learning. And so I'd love to hear panelists' thoughts. And this actually cued me, Jennifer, as you were talking about the New Day Lodge, which is introducing the sport to new folks, right? And that is all about being curious and being a learner. And so, like, what do folks think about embedding and really highlighting like the learning opportunities that these experiences provide? Open to anyone.
Oh, I'm going to hand it over, but I'll just put one thing in there. I think that to speak to the learner, it has to be, this learner has to be at the center of your design. They have to be, all your decisions have to be around what does that individual child, youth, beginner, what have you need, and take that into careful consideration around the developmental windows or working with research partners to understand how to make sure that all detailed facets are considered and factored in so the conditions are for success. So you increase the likelihood the person will have a positive, impactful experience. And that is got to be at the heart.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in. I agree with you. I think that obviously, there's an expectation that you're going to be understand the needs and expectations of the learner specifically. But a way that we're thinking about some things, and specifically when you start to think about the context of a science center, learning is definitely one of those things that people would assume about again, the fact that you're coming and you want that opportunity for that. But if you don't have people's attention, you're yelling into the wind. No one's going to hear or see that. And it's finding those ways to introduce, there's science in everything, which is amazing and a fact. But it's ways of, again, opening the conversation in a fun and engaging way. And I think it goes even further than that, and back to the kind of the top of the conversation where, we've got a city and the community more holistically are really discerning on how they're spending their income and where they're going to put it and whatnot. And they want so many different things to be kind of ticked off the boxes, if you will, as part of how they're going to invest that money. And again, if you lead with learning as the only piece of how they want to spend that money, I don't think you're going to be as successful as you'd like to. You have to tick a few more boxes on that from an emotional or entertainment kind of perspective to again get their interest, because there's so many opportunities out there for people to really want to participate in the experience economy. So again, it's getting their attention through fun things that make sense for them and that they can see themselves in right away and at a broad, wide spectrum. And then there's always that opportunity, and you should be prepared, especially if there's an expectation for learning, to have that backup behind it to deliver any kind of depth of message or opportunities for further engagement through it. So, there's, I think if you're not getting their attention first, learning doesn't matter. You have to have the people here to be able to know, to be able to learn it all. So.
Go ahead,
I'm just gonna say everyone wants something different right now, and that is interesting. And we all have a responsibility to, as my soapbox, Patty, is this situation is, we're Theatre Calgary, we have Calgary in our name, we need to serve all Calgarians, and that means people who want to learn and people who don't want to learn. In this situation, I'm just going to point out that we are tracking to have our most popular show this season be Escape to Margaritaville, and has the word escape in it. So I think people were looking for, and also we opened and it was snowing, because it was 2 weeks ago when it was snowing. So I think people were looking for a moment in the sun, which now we have in abandon. But it is a moment where I guess you could stretch it to say that we do have a conversation about how the potato could power electricity, and there's a little science there, but it's mostly fun. So that's for you, Science Telespark. We should have partnered. We missed opportunity right there. But I think that what I have, that's on the other side of that coin is we did forgiveness just before this, which was based on the award-winning Canada Reads book by Mark Sakamoto about both the POW experience for Canadians and the Canadian-Japanese internment experience in juxtaposition. And which wasn't actually like a deep learning thing, but it is learning with accessibility. And I think that people are looking for a little bit of everything right now from their I'll call it extracurricular activities.
Yeah, I did go to Forgiveness and it was fantastic. Plug for Theater Calgary.
And don't
There.
forget the potato powered whatever, if you want to come to Escape to Margaritaville, if you
There you
listen hard,
go.
you'll hear it.
I am going to ask one last question of panelists before we wrap up, which is, if you wanted those on the participating in today's webinar to take one thing away today, what would that one thing be? And I'm so thankful for the discussion that we had today and the connections and the collaborations that I know will happen in the future. But one thing you'd like the audience to take away today, and we'll start with Maya.
Well, actually, I think the takeaway for me is that, first of all, we don't exist in a vacuum. We exist with each other, and so it's the rising tides raise all boats philosophy that my success is somebody else is going to make sure that someone else is going to also succeed. We can only move forward if we're all moving forward. And then I think the very obvious thing that I want to say as a cross sector industry wide is you can't have a world-class city without world-class arts, culture, and experiences. So and we are a world-class city, and so we have to support arts and culture, because without it, we will not stay here.
Awesome. And I'll go to Rod.
Well, I feel fortunate to go second, but I can only just reiterate what Maya had said. I think if there's a couple of key takeaways, it's that we're all in this together. And it takes all of us collaboratively to, have these conversations, and the doors are open, because it is true. Raising tides raise all ships, all of those kinds of things. And especially as, this city continues to grow, not only in its size, but also in its diversity, the opportunity for us to really be a beacon in the international stage, and be recognized for the amazing work that we do in all facets of the economy, whether it be experience or others. We have to, be supportive of each other. And again, it's kind of the heritage in which this city was founded on. I truly believe in that. Help your neighbor, and, the collective success of all of us is going to move forward. So be patient, ask lots of questions, and look to others for support, because I fundamentally do believe that all Calgarians, and specifically in the experience economy, we all want for all of us to be successful, because again, that perpetual growth will help us all into the future.
Thanks, Rod. I'll go to Patty.
Hi. I think, again, solidarity. We're all in this together, and connect with each other, right? Partnership, good collaboration involves the good times as well as the bad. And so know that, when we're all struggling in this overwhelming, challenging, all of us trying to recover from the last 3 years, all of those things, use each other as your sounding boards and sometimes your coping mechanisms. Inevitably, somebody's going to have had the same challenge you've had or are experiencing right now. I think the point I made earlier about this is a long game. This is a long-term change. As Kim said, our intention is to continue to undertake this research around the experience economy, and we're trying our best to share it open source. You can go to the Stone Olofson website. Many of us who are partners have links to it. So check in on that information. And we do try to offer information sessions when we release the data, because data is gold. And I think the other part to just keep in mind is when we're talking about these kind of tectonic shifts, these are big changes. When it's affecting across sector, across experience, across time and income and budget, this is big. So that does mean that probably you're looking at different operating models, different cash flows, different ways of budgeting, different suppliers and vendors and partners than the ones you work with now. So all of those things are actually variable in terms of how you choose to create those amazing experiences that you do and you have been doing for a long time for the benefit of Calgarians. So thank you for that. You know, I guess I'll throw another opportunity out there. There was a question in the Q&A about somebody who's running a short-term market, 4 days, right? And so how do you get out there? How do you get people to know? Well, part of it is about knowing how many people do you want to come, and don't say everybody, because that's not possible, right? Good, fast, cheap, right? So, so being really thoughtful about what those targets are, what those signs of success are for you are going to be really important. So you know what's in your wheelhouse and what you're capable of iteratively, because that's going to change again over time. So in thinking about that, Chinook Blast, we just talked about 6 weeks in January, February. Is that a place to be a partner? Chinook Blast is a platform. They don't produce hardly any of the programming. It's others who do it. And Chinook Blast creates the opportunity and the spaces for that to occur. We have this small thing called the Calgary Stampede. Now, it's pretty saturated in the community, but there's an example of a festival. It is known all over the world. And I know for many musicians that we work with, that is when they make enough money to get them through the year. So for those of you who offer services, might there be some way for you to hitch your wagon to the Calgary Stampede wagon? In September of 2023, we will have the World Petroleum Congress. I'm going to run over time. I'm sorry, Kate. World Petroleum Congress, 20,000 delegates from all over the world are going to be here for 5 days looking for something to do. Do you maybe have something that can be included in that? We have the Special Olympics here in February of 2024. I think that's 5,000 people. We have Rotary International in 2025, 30,000 delegates from all over the world. So maybe your programming's not about the same time every year for this, but is about these ebbs and flows, or some portion of your programming might be during these ebbs and flows, when we're going to have a critical mass of people that need some amazing experience that they're only going to be able to have in Calgary, only here. So think about those things. Please reach out to Calgary Arts Development and my team, or the good people at Economic Development, or the good people at Tourism. That's what we keep ourselves up at night thinking about. So I want you to know you have friends. You have people who want to promote and find ways for folks to take advantage of the experiences you offer. So thank you for including me in this.
Thanks so much, Patty. And last word to words, not just singular word, to Jennifer.
Thanks, Kate. We have an incredible city, and we have, as Patty was saying, we have opportunity ahead. We have infrastructure, assets, we have each other. And I think the opportunity to learn and share and be considerate in learning from each other, because Calgary is changing. It's changing right before our eyes. It looks different, it sounds different, and it's going to continue as our population diversifies. And so we need each other as service providers and experience delivers, and we have to co-deliver, co-create, and leverage our incredible opportunities ahead. So thank you for including us, and the power of the environment.
Awesome. Thank you so much, all of you, for the incredible conversation. I learned so much today. And to our audience for your participation and the really active chat and the questions that came in. I could talk about this literally all day today. I know we all have to go back to our jobs. So a word of thanks also before we wrap up to the entire behind the scenes Calgary Economic Development team for putting on this event, especially to our events planning team for making this possible. It truly takes all of us to make this show go on. So thanks to the audience for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you all at our upcoming New Economy Live events. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.